Hello and welcome to this Class of 2026 GCSE information presentation. My name is Faye Meskam. I am Strategic Lead for Year 11 and part of the Senior Leadership team here at Dormston. In order to help all parents and carers in supporting their child through the coming weeks, together with the help of our wonderful curriculum leaders, I've put together something that I hope you will find is a one-stop shop for all of the key information you're going to need as we approach the summer exam season. Now, as I sit here recording this, it's the final week of January, very cold and wet, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that pupils have months ahead of them before their exams start. However, in terms of the time between now and our first practical exams, there are in fact only 8 school weeks. Pupils will of course have February half term and the Easter break before these exams start, but these weeks will go quickly and so preparation is key. With preparation in mind, you'll find vital information from all of our curriculum leaders in terms of exam dates, what their particular exams entail and how best to prepare your children for them. I've also included information on revision techniques, how to create a bespoke revision timetable, rules around GCSE exam conduct, thanks to Mr. Grundy, and links to our wellbeing sites. You'll also find links to the key dates area on our website on which you'll find the full list of summer exams. I hope you find it useful. For parents and carers who attended our Welcome to Year 11 evening back in September, this slide will be very familiar to you. This is the highly experienced and dedicated team who work with myself and Mr. Ramos, the head of Year 11, to guide our wonderful Year 11s through what can often be a very challenging year. If you've got any questions or queries regarding your child or any questions relating to Year 11, there'll be a member of this team who can help you. To email any member of the team, simply use the first letter of their first name together with their full surname followed by @dormston.dudley.sch.uk.
Punctuality. This slide has already been shown in assembly many times, just to remind pupils of the loss of learning time when they are routinely late for lesson. The figures show that for pupils who miss 10 minutes of learning every day for every lesson, the cumulative loss of learning over an average half term of 6 weeks is significant. In fact, it works out as 25 hours, essentially over 4 days of learning. The start of each lesson contains vital information for pupils as well as staff, because we all start a lesson with a do it now activity. This is an embedded part of the lessons. It's 10 minutes of retrieval practice, which provides teachers with a chance to look for and address any misconceptions which could be impeding a child's progress. It's vital, therefore, that pupils all attend at the same time and the start of the lesson should not be missed.
This slide on attendance was also shared back in September on the Welcome to Year 11 Parents Evening and is also routinely and frequently shown to pupils in form time and during assembly. The table uses actual historical data of what happens to progress if attendance isn't where it needs to be. So if we start on the right hand side of the table, you can see that on average, when a child has attendance of below 80%, their final GCSE grades are on average 1 to 2 grades where they could and should be. And this has a huge impact. If your child is currently on a grade 3 exam, for example, in maths or English, and doesn't get their grade 4, they will have to repeat that exam in their post-16 situation, which is not what anybody wants. On the other side of the coin is, however, what happens on average when a pupil's attendance to school is between 97 and 100. For pupils like this, and it is on average, their grades will exceed their target grades by 1. Pupils are frequently reminded about the strong link between attendance and progress, and attendance, as you know, is now linked to prom. Should a pupil have more than 3 days off school between January the 19th, which was when we launched the prom, and the start of the Easter holidays, their place at the prom is in jeopardy. In addition to this, if a pupil is attending school for 100% of the time but not attending lessons, this will also count against their chances of an invite. It's essential that all lessons are attended and engaged with if pupils are going to make the most of their final weeks before the start of exams. This is a copy of our updated spring revision timetable. You will see that there are early morning sessions which are at the top of the table for both weeks 1 and 2, and then the centre of the table shows you the revision that is happening on week 1. So the week 1 revision sessions are core only, with English, maths and science on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then in week 2 after school then we have our option subjects. But one of the biggest things that pupils can do to help themselves make progress is to just pop and see a teacher after school to ask for extra help if they need to. There isn't a member of our teaching team who will say no to that, to pupils just popping in after school, just asking for 5 minutes extra on something that is holding them back from making the progress that they need. So I would fully recommend that pupils do that. In terms of A10 and A9, both of those rooms are open after school every day from 3:10 to around 4:30, although sometimes we are in there until 5:30. Pupils can go to their revision sessions and then pop into A10 afterwards, or just use A10 when there aren't any revision sessions. I would strongly recommend, and we do strongly recommend, that pupils attend their actual revision sessions rather than coming into A10 to do independent study. Form time intervention sessions have restarted. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during form time we have maths, English and science. If your child is not involved in these sessions, there is a clear expectation that these pupils use form time to revise independently. Obviously, for those in computer rooms, there are many online revision aids, but for those in classrooms, pupils should be bringing paper-based revision materials. They are constantly reminded. If you could help us with this, that would be fantastic, because over the course of a week, pupils will have then 1 hour of extra revision time. And as our Year 11 team regularly remind pupils, revision should be little and often, and 20 minutes 3 times a week is one example of this. So, revision. It takes many forms, but the key is that it must be effective, and so it needs to be active revision. For example, reading notes again and again but doing nothing with the information is not effective. It's not a complete waste of time, but when time is of the essence, let's choose a more impactful method. The slide shows a few examples of revision, from dual coding to mind maps, quizzes and summarising information, but the main thing here is that pupils need to find out what works for them. For example, if they use flashcards for a couple of weeks using the Lightner method, there is a video that follows from this, to learn key dates for the topic of making of America, or to help them spot the 3 main tenses in French or German, and then they go on to be able to recall and use this information in a lesson or a test, this revision has been impactful. If they can only recall reading and rereading a set of key dates but can't recall the exact detail, then it hasn't been worthwhile. And that could also make them pupils think, I can't revise and nothing stays in my head. If one method doesn't work for pupils, then they need to experiment with another. On the subject specific slides that are coming up shortly, there are specific ideas and resources for revision directly from our expert curriculum leaders, many of whom in fact have been examiners, or they currently are examiners in their subject. Whatever technique or techniques pupils use, their revision should be well planned, it should be strategic, so that more time is given to those subject or areas that they found the most challenging, and it should include built-in rest breaks. For this area in particular, I can recommend the Pomodoro technique, and I've included a video for this to explain the rationale behind it and how it works after this slide. Revision shouldn't be too easy. Pupils should find elements difficult. Revision ideally should also be distraction free, and there are several free apps which pupils can download so that their phone doesn't take them down the rabbit hole of funny videos and social media at the expense of revision. I've also included a free app for this called the Forest app, which is great to help keep the phone at a distance and keep pupils focused.
We procrastinate because we believe that a project or task is too big to finish. But when you break that huge task into 25-minute segments, it becomes easily achievable. The Pomodoro technique was developed by Francesco Cirillo in 1980s. If you don't know, Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. Cirillo used a kitchen timer shaped like a tomato as his personal timer when he was a university student, and thus the method's name. The technique can help you power through distractions and get things done while taking frequent breaks. Best of all, it's probably one of the simplest productivity methods to implement since all you need is a timer. Here's how to get started with Pomodoro. Number 1. Choose a task to be accomplished. Number 2. Set the timer to 25 minutes and work until the timer rings. Number 3. Take a 5-minute break and restart the task. Number 4. Take a longer break every 4 Pomodoro sessions. Simple, right? Let's break it down a bit further. When choosing the task you want to accomplish, make sure it's just one task. If you want to study, don't check your phone or browse Facebook at the same time. You don't want to decrease your productivity by working on 5 things at once. I've already discussed how multitasking is ineffective in another video. Do what you can to minimize interruptions and make sure that everything you don't need is put away before you begin. Shut your office door, turn off your phone, and close all unnecessary websites. Also, prepare everything you need for the task at hand, as it will mess with your focus if you run around looking for things that you might need. Like a cooking chef, get all your ingredients ready. Another thing you would want to have at hand is a notepad and a pen. When you're working, your mind might wander off a bit. It's not uncommon to suddenly remember that you need to take out the trash, call your friend before lunch, etc. Don't allow yourself to become distracted if ideas or thoughts about other things pop into your head. Write them down on your notepad and set them aside for later. For now, focus on your set task. Got everything ready? Great, time to start the timer. You don't actually need to go out and buy a special tomato-shaped kitchen timer. The countdown app built into your smartphone will do. When setting a time, it doesn't have to be exactly 25 minutes either. The creator of the technique used it for 25, but for you it might be more productive if you set the timer for 20 or maybe 30 minutes. I highly recommend you experiment with session lengths and find what works best for you. After all, the technique is not set in stone and should be customized to your length of focus before you need a break. For me, the Pomodoro technique is just a way of breaking that mental resistance we often have before starting something. That's why I use it to get the wheel rolling. It's hard for me to get started, but I find it super easy to keep on going. For that reason, I'll often find myself still hammering away at a task after the timer already buzzed. When I start losing focus, that's when I'll take a break. Each focus session is one Pomodoro. When you complete one session, you take a 5-minute break before starting a new one. However, this may not suit everyone. Some people might find regular short breaks too distracting, especially if they come at times when inspiration is flowing. Like I said, I often just continue my session without stopping. What you do during the break is also completely up to you. Get a glass of water to stay hydrated, go to the bathroom if you need to, or do something from your to-do list. Personally, I always stretch, because the stiffness from sitting in a chair starts killing me otherwise. When the break is over, reset your timer for the next session and continue your work. When you've completed 4 Pomodoro sessions, take a 20 to 30 minute break. Use it to have lunch, go for a walk, or read a book. Anything works as long as it takes you away from your desk for a while and clears your mind of what you were doing before. The goal of Pomodoro technique is to help you to get into the zone and focus, but it's also to remind you to come up for air. It can also help you find your sweet spot, since tracking your completed Pomodoros can help you understand how you're spending your time. You can pinpoint the times during the day when you are most likely to focus properly and times when you struggle to get things done. That way you can adjust the way you work. And I'll be honest, I rarely complete all 4 Pomodoro sessions. Since I usually keep on going after the timer rings, my one session is usually way longer than 25 minutes and there is no need to do multiple sessions. Also, sometimes I'm just having a bad day or I'm feeling lazy and I'll only complete one 25-minute session and call it a day. To me, maintaining the habit is more important than the length of time spent on the task. Even if I only did one 25-minute session, I still accomplished something that day and didn't break my habit. Alright, now that I've covered everything, I highly suggest you try out the Pomodoro technique yourself. It has been my go-to strategy when I need to get something done and is yet to fail me. Hope it works for you as much as it works for me and helps you become better than yesterday.
A revision timetable can make a significant difference to a child in terms of their level of organisation and the impact it has on motivation and how it helps them to become self-disciplined. Now, the idea I have here of this bespoke revision timetable is not something that can be completed in 10 minutes. It is to be used as a working document. It is quite complicated to set up to start with. There's separate steps that need to be done in a certain order, but I am in A10 basically every day after school to help with this should pupils wish to do it. They're also, all pupils in year 11 will get the opportunity on the 4th of Feb during their PSHE lesson to create one of their own, have they not should they not have already done one. So the first thing they do is they're given a blank template onto which they add days and dates. The next thing is they add any existing commitments, and these all need to be put in one colour. So that's current revision sessions, intervention sessions, any extracurricular activities either at home or at school, time with friends and family, and where relevant, exam dates. Now at this point we don't have any exam dates to put in, but the next time they fill in one of these there definitely will be. The next thing to do is to, on the back of it, list all school subjects in order of personal challenge, with the most difficult and the most challenging subject going at the top of the list. That is the subject that you will see, or you should see if you do this properly, the most frequently, so that we're taking out the fear factor of that subject, we're giving more and more exposure to the content of that subject and helping build confidence. Once we've put in that, say for example it was chemistry is always at the top of my list, I find it really difficult, I put chemistry in every other day for 30 minutes for example. I don't just say I'm doing chemistry, I need to be specific. I'm going to do chemistry, I'm going to use Cognito, I'm going to use C1, revise C1 topics and so on. The idea of this revision table is that once it's done and it's complete, when a pupil sits down to revise, they know exactly what they're going to revise, they know where they're going to revise and how they're going to revise, and that's really important because a lot of pupils come to me and say I just don't know how to start. So even though there's a lot of groundwork that goes into this, once it's done, it obviously can evolve as time goes on and as pupils become more confident with using it, but essentially once they leave A10 and they've got this timetable, then they're good to go. I can also use that time to talk about different revision sessions. It is also very important, and I will go through this with them, to add rest breaks, and that's we use the Pomodoro technique to help us with that, and that is on the next slide. But essentially that's a way of making sure that there are bespoke tiny little chunked sections of revision followed by rest breaks for processing time, so we're not overloading the brain. That's what we want to avoid at all costs. So if pupils want to come and do our revision timetable with me, it takes 45 minutes and the place to do that is in A10. Other than that, we're all going to do one February the 4th during the PSHE session.
Okay, if you want to get focused and remove distractions, then you really need to check out this app, Forest. In essence, this app is just a timer. You open it up, you set a time, you plant your tree, and you get to work. If you're tempted to be distracted and go off your phone, it will stop you from using any other app. If you really have to give up and be distracted for whatever reason, you can do that, but your tree will die and wither, and your forest for the day or week will be filled with dead trees. And let's be honest, no one wants that. So it's really motivational to stay focused.
Exam season and the run up to it is often a very stressful time in households, and so we need to help pupils manage this. One way around or a good place to start is to make sure that revision starts early, as cramming is a surefire way to increase stress levels both at home and at school. When you're building your revision timetable, as I said previously, building rest breaks, make sure that extracurricular activities aren't overly compromised and that time with friends and family is built into the week. All of that will all help reduce stress. However, if pupils and parents need more support from time to time, the link on the following page will take you to our Dormston School Wellbeing page, on which you can find lots of help and support. If your child is experiencing stress, please get in touch with the school sooner rather than later so that we can do all we can to support. The link below will take you to the Class of 2026 homepage. Scroll down the page to find key dates, on which you can also find dates of the summer exams. Later on in the year, your child will be sent home with a copy of an individualised timetable, which will be just for them.
The JCQ regulations are a set of exam rules that must be followed by all students in their exam rooms, whether this is the sports hall, the PLC or any other room. They set out really obvious things like no talking or communicating in any way with other candidates, but also things which are easily forgotten. Equipment having a clear see-through pencil case. Any water bottles must also be clear. Calculator cases must be left in bags and not brought to the exam desk. However, by far the biggest issue with these regulations is that candidates must not have mobile phones, earphones, AirPods or watches of any description on their person during the exam. Even if they don't use them and they are just in their pocket, this can, and has in the past, led to disqualification. All phones must be handed in and left in the bag switched off. If these phones go off, even if it's in their bag and it's not by the exam desk, it can lead to disqualification.
I'm going to talk to you about the English language GCSE that your son or daughter is sitting in May and June of this year. First thing I'd like to point out is that the exam board is AQA. It always helps if parents know the exam board because they know where to go to if they're doing any searches to support their son or daughter in their studies. They sit 2 papers, paper 1, paper 2, and each one is worth 50% of their final grade, and those papers are both an hour and 45 minutes long. The skills that are tested in both of the papers are the child's reading skills and their writing skills, and they're effectively unseen. We won't know what either fiction or non-fiction text that your son and daughter will read in that exam. We won't have seen them. So what we have to do is, by preparing them, showing them lots of text, lots of past papers, and showing them how to answer the questions. So paper 1 is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. And your child will have an extract from a novel or a short story. It could be from the beginning, the middle, or the end of that short story. And they will have 4 reading questions to answer on that story. They will have to talk about how the writer uses language to create effect, how the writer builds the structure of a text, and they will also have to evaluate how effectively the writer does something. After they've spent an hour on that, they then have 45 minutes to write. They will either be given, they will be given both a picture and then the title of a story. So they can either write to describe, or they can do a piece of narrative writing, a piece of storytelling. And they have 45 minutes to do that. Obviously, for this question, their spelling, their punctuation, their grammar, and their organisation in paragraphs is really important. And 16 of the 40 marks for this question are for SPAG. The second paper, and this will be the last English language paper that they do, is called Writers' Viewpoints and Perspectives. This one's slightly more tricky because they have to read non-fiction text this time. That could be an article, a speech, a letter, something like that, a piece of non-fiction, an autobiography, for example. And they will be given 2 texts this time, one that was written before the 20th century. Often these texts tend to be written around the middle of the 1800s, about the same time, 1850s, about the same time as when A Christmas Carol was written. So they have to read a modern text, which is usually source A, and then they have to read an older text, source B. It's the same. They have 4 reading questions on this, and the questions go up in level of difficulty. So the final question in both paper 1 and paper 2 is worth the most marks. And then after that, they have to do a piece of writing, a piece of non-fiction writing. Now, essentially, they are writing an argument. They are stating their viewpoint on something and they are arguing for it. But the form that writing could take could be a speech, a letter, or an article. So they've currently been taught all 3 of those forms, and we will be revisiting that as soon as we've finished the study of Macbeth. So, how to revise English language? Well, as I've said, it's an unseen, but there are certain things your child can do to make sure that they've got a head start. First of all, read. Read a range of fiction, short stories, novels, and non-fiction. Opinion articles, letters, autobiographies, all of those things will help them when it comes to that exam. They should also attempt to write for pleasure, short stories, descriptions of images. What I always say to my classes, have something in your back pocket. Have a really good crafted character just in case you can use it in the exam. Have a really powerful setting just in case you can use it in the exam. So, top tips that you can talk to your child about. YouTube videos are fantastic. One of my favourites is a gentleman called Mr. Bruff, and he runs through each AQA question. Your children will be familiar with Mr. Bruff. We've sometimes used him in lessons or for homework. Also, someone called Dystopia Junkie, who also looks at the skills of the AQA paper. Our advice is to revise little and often. You have to do little bites at it. There's no point revising any subject for 2 hours. You just won't do as well. If you do a little bit a night, it's called spaced practice and it's being proven to work. I also say with the language paper, to revise properly, look for the pen and not the book. You should be doing past questions, past papers, writing, not highlighting. That's no proven, way of revising. You should be doing practice questions. There's a website called PMT, which stands for Physics and Maths Tutor. And I know it seems a little odd that an English teacher's saying go to Physics and Maths Tutor, but they have every single past paper, insert the text that they've got to read, but they also have the mark schemes. So your child could be doing a practice paper and then marking it against the mark scheme. The most important thing is to memorise how long they've got to spend on each question. Memorise structure and timing of this exam, because we often find that children run out of time for the writing section. They've only got 45 minutes to showcase how well they can write, and if they run out of time, they'll lose the marks. I hope that's given you an insight into the English language paper, and any other questions, contact me at the school. It's Fiona Mosley, Curriculum Leader English. I'm now going to talk about the GCSE English Literature exam that your son and daughter will be sitting again in May and early June this year. It's a different exam board for English literature. We do the exam board Educas. And it's helpful for parents to know what exam board their child's doing, because sometimes they want to support them with their revision from home, maybe get on the Educas website. There's some really useful things on there. So the exam is made up of 2 papers, component 1 and component 2. Component 1 is a relatively short exam at 2 hours. Unfortunately, component 2 is actually 2.5 hours long. And that's the one I think our students struggle with the most, just because the sheer act of writing without stopping for 2.5 hours, it takes a lot from them. So the first component 1 paper, they do 2 questions, one on Shakespeare and one on anthology poetry. The Shakespeare question split into 2 parts. First part is 20 minutes long, and they concentrate on an extract and how the audience might respond to the extract. After that, they have 40 minutes for 25 marks to write an essay on a character, a theme, or a relationship across the whole play. That's quite a big ask in 40 minutes because the play is 5 acts long, and they have to be brief but very accurate in tracking that character, that relationship, etc. So the Shakespeare questions, both together, are worth 40 marks. After they've done this in an hour, they then move on to anthology poetry. They have an anthology of 17 to 18 poems which they've studied. One of those will be printed for them in the exam. and they will be asked to respond to how the given poem explores a theme. The theme could be childhood, nature, love, war. They do know the thematic links now between all their different poems. After they've written about that poem for 20 minutes, they then compare it with another poem from the anthology. This one will not be printed for them, which is why you will frantically find them revising quotes from the different poems in that anthology before their exam. They have to compare the treatment of the theme across both poems and compare and contrast the poems. That's also worth 40 marks. So component 1, total of 80 marks. Component 2, as you can see, has 3 questions this time: an inspector calls, a Christmas carol, and unseen poetry. Again, these questions are all worth 40 marks in total, so the paper is out of 200 marks. I will say something at this point. Generally, to get a grade 4, it's around about half marks. It's generally around about 100 out of 200 to get a grade 4. So they'll spend their time on inspector calls, writing an essay again on characters, themes, or relationships. They will then move on to a Christmas carol. Now, the important thing about a Christmas carol is that 1/3 of their marks are for knowing the context. So knowing about Dickens's life, knowing about the Industrial Revolution, knowing about poverty in London in the mid-1800s. So they have to know their context. So you will find them not just revising the book, but also revising the influences on Dickens and what was going on in society around him at that time. They will then move on to their unseen poetry, which does exactly what it says on the tin. They're given a poem they've never seen before. They write about that for 20 minutes and its impact on them. And then they're given another unseen poem on the same theme, and they are expected to compare the two. So that, as an overarching view, is what we have been preparing them for since the start of year 10. So they do something slightly different this time, because English literature is more about what they know and what they have remembered. So they should definitely reread their texts. If they find it difficult to read them without being in the classroom with their teacher, listen to audiobooks. There are plenty free ones out there. All of the texts are on YouTube, and it might be a nice little way of getting them to sleep at night. They should write timelines with key plot points for all of their texts on them, and quotes. They should track characters, themes, and relationships across the text. Practice essays. Use their knowledge of what's come up before. Their teachers have told them what all the past questions have been. Sometimes questions have been repeated. And they should write responses but keep themselves tightly to the time they'll get in the exam. If they get used to writing for an hour when they're only allowed 45 minutes to write, then they won't finish their essay. Practice strong overviews. That's the examiner's first idea of how good a candidate you are. If you've got a really sharp overview that talks about the genre of the text, that talks about the writer's big ideas and the author's intent, then they've got a strong start. And they should have quotation banks. Memorize key quotations. I would say get them on sticky notes around your bedroom wall, or get them up on the fridge. Parents, you can help by testing them on quotations. And don't forget to encourage them to analyse language, because that is one of the assessment objectives. So our top tips for your children. YouTube videos are available aplenty. Again, Mr. Bruff, Dystopia Junkie, but they may find some more. Again, space out that revision. Do 20 minutes a night. Again, Physics and Maths Tutor website have past papers for Educas and the mark schemes on their site for English literature. There's also a brilliant product called Padlet. If you Google Padlet A Christmas Carol, it will bring you up with all the best knowledge of that text, past questions, examples of answers, and it's a great one-stop shop for all of their literature texts. And also, again, as with paper 1, memorise. What's my exam going to look like? What page will my inspector calls question be on? What page will my Christmas carol be on? What number question is it? We go through it with them. They do need to memorise it, but we do have our own English department YouTube channel, which includes all of the poems that they've studied and us talking about those poems, and also includes exam walkthroughs of all their exams. So please feel free to hop onto the English department's YouTube channel. And as I said before, if there are any questions to ask, just contact me at school via email. Thank you.
Hi, it's Miss Jakes here to discuss how you can best help your learner in their upcoming GCSE maths exam. So a bit of background info, we do the exam board Edexcel, and our exam is made up of 3 papers, each worth 80 marks. First of all will be the non-calculator paper, and that will be followed by 2 calculator papers. So the best way we find to revise maths is past papers. Attempt these questions and watch any videos linked to these topics if you need their help on any of them. Get them marked by their teacher, or alternatively they can find mark schemes for themselves online on one of the websites that I'll discuss with you in a moment. These not only help their revision, but they will also help us utilise the Pinpoint Learning website that I will discuss with you in a second. So our maths recommended websites: Pinpoint Learning, which I'll explain in a moment, MathsWatch, which they've been using to do their homework now since year 7, so they're very skilled at using that website. Another one we find quite good is First Class Maths. Now that has a list of the topics and also the percentage of times they have come up since the exam changed in 2017, so pupils can focus on the things that come up time and time again. Another one is Maths Genie and Mr. Barton Maths. They're good places to get old exam papers from and old mark schemes. They can also watch videos on how to do different topics on those websites. Corbett Maths is another one that has a lot of old questions on there. Some of them might have Corbett Maths revision cards if they've purchased them through school, and they'll be hyperlinked to videos on that website. As usual, YouTube and GCSE Bite Size are also good ones. So, our top tips. Once they have completed any past papers, they need to really log all of them on the Pinpoint Learning website. Their teachers should have shown them how to use this. If they haven't yet, they will be soon. So this builds up a picture of the learner as an individual, and by the time they come to the exam, the more papers they've typed into it, the better it'll get to know them, and it will actually come up with a revision list for them. It'll tell them the amount of times they've been tested on that topic and whether they've got better or they've declined, and it will literally say revise this topic if they need to. Not only that, it also has all the MathsWatch videos linked to it, so they can go away and know where to find that help. Another thing, completing non-required work on MathsWatch. That's stuff that they will have covered all last year and some of this year, so it's just continually recapping, going over the things that they will need to know. Lastly, come to revision sessions. Particularly those between the papers, there is only a certain amount that they can be asked. So by the time that second and third paper come along, we can eliminate some topics that have already come up and really focus that revision on the things that are most likely to come. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Peacock and I'm the Head of History here at the Dormston School. Today I'm going to talk you through exactly how the GCSE history course works, what the exams look like, and most importantly, how pupils should be revising if they want to achieve their very best grade. So this presentation is designed to give you clarity, confidence, and a clear plan for your child going forward, so you know exactly what's expected of them and how they can succeed. So the slide that you can see explains everything you need to know about the GCSE history course and how to revise for it successfully. The exam board is OCR. The final GCSE grade is made up of 5 exam papers, and each paper is worth 20% of the overall mark, which means every paper that they sit matters equally. The exams this year are as follows. The first paper is the History Around Us paper, which focuses specifically on Himley Hall. This exam takes place on the 15th of May in the morning. The second paper focuses on British history, and this includes Elizabethan England and Crime and Punishment. This exam is on the 4th of June in the morning. The third and final paper pupils will sit focuses on world history. This includes the making of America and living under Nazi rule. This exam is on the 9th of June in the afternoon. Now let's take a look at how pupils should be revising. They should be using their class booklets and revision exercise books. These were sent home at the end of the last academic year, and every time pupils complete a booklet, it is the expectation that they take it home and add it to their folder. They can also use the carousel question banks. They are set regular homework on carousel. There is the Dormston History YouTube channel. There are past exam papers available, and there is also the History B School's History Project textbook, which is available online or can be checked out from the PLC. Here is the advice we give every successful history student. The revision that they undertake must be 50% knowledge and 50% exam skills. Revise little and often. Last minute cramming does not build the depth of understanding and knowledge they need in order to be really successful. They should revise by topic and by key themes. Each topic is broken down into 5 key themes with the exception of the Himley paper, and they should revise by topic and by key themes in order to be successful. Put a real focus on subject-specific vocabulary. The key dates and the key events that feature in every single one of the papers are crucial, and they should learn them as well. And most importantly, the structure and timing of exam questions should be memorised by them so they can manage their time confidently in the exam. When it comes to GCSE history, it's not about luck or last-minute revision. It is about consistent effort, smart preparation, and understanding both the knowledge and the exam skills. If pupils revise regularly, use the resources that we've provided them, and follow the advice from their history teachers, there is absolutely no reason they cannot achieve an excellent result. We are here as a faculty to support you every step of the way, but their success ultimately comes from the work that they have put in. Start now. Stay focused, take control of their learning. That is how they'll be successful. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing what they all achieve.
Hello folks, this is just a breakdown of the GCSE support that we can offer for you this year. As you can see on the slide, the exam board is AQA, and that's really important that you follow that because the exam boards do differ slightly. So if you're searching anything online, always make sure that you're looking and using AQA exam board, because there are some things that are completely specific to our specification. The exams themselves are split into 3 main papers. They're all an hour and a half each. Paper 1 is 35%, paper 2 is 35%, and paper 3 is 30%. Paper 1 and 2 are your physical and human papers. Those are the 6 topics that we have taught you in lesson. Paper 3 is slightly different. It's split into 2 main parts. Part of that is your field work that we've been to Cardiff Mill Valley and Wolverhampton. And the second part is something called an issues evaluation. Approximately 12 weeks before the exam, you will get almost like a little magazine really with a particular issue. And we have to go through that in lesson, and you will get tested on those various questions. The great news is for that paper in particular that you will get a fresh blank copy in the actual exam. So it's a nice feeling in paper 3 to turn up knowing some of the content already. You can see the various dates that the geography exams are for this year. So one of the questions is how to revise for geography. Well, we've worked really hard as a geography team to provide everything for you, and you've got information on all of your 6 units in your books and your booklets. You've got knowledge organisers, your RAG rated audit sheets, revision clocks, case study strips, and you should have all of these in your big revision folder. Don't forget, one of the best ways to revise as well is by looking over old exams. So you've had an exam at the end of every single unit, and you've also had 2 mocks with feedback and waggles as well. Many of you have bought revision guides, and these are excellent to use, and what we've done is linked up all of our case study information with the information in the revision guides, so they correlate really, really well. You've also got early morning revision that you can attend, and we would recommend that you attend. And this might be a range of different things. It might be a skill focus, it could be tips on how to revise effectively in geography, it might be a particular case study focus, or it could be looking through extended petal questions as well. One of the things that we'd recommend that you do as part of your revision is use some recommended websites. Internet Geography is particularly good. Again, just make sure that you're using AQA, and BBC Bite Size is also really, really useful. It's nicely laid out, and there are little quizzes after each section. So our top tips for geography revision is to revise, basically. There is a famous phrase, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So revision is absolutely key. All of the content was completed by Feb half term, and the rest of it is now over to you. We suggest that you form a revision program that suits you. You need to be engaged by your revision. If you're bored revising, you're not learning and you're not revising. So the best tip is to start with an audit of what you actually know. Break your revision down bit by bit, chunk it down, test yourself with quiz questions, and test yourself with all of your old petal material as well. Okay, hope this helps.
GCSE Religious Studies. The exam board you are following is AQA, and it is specification A. You are studying the 2 religions, Buddhism and Christianity. So the exams. There are 2 written exam papers. Each paper is equally weighted, 50% of your final grade. Each paper is 1 hour and 45 minutes long. Paper 1, it will be early in your exam series, includes Buddhism and Christianity, and that's both the beliefs and teaching section and the practices section. You will actually have 2 different exam papers on paper 1. Both of them are classed as paper 1. You're expected to answer both exam papers, in the same time limit of 1 hour and 45 minutes. It is up to you whether you want to start with Buddhism or start with Christianity, but you answer all the questions on both religions. Paper 2, about a week later, is your ethical themes in religions. These are themes A, B, D and E. You will get an answer booklet, but you'll also get a question paper. You do not need to write anything on the question paper. That will not be handed back to the exam board. Only your answer booklet will be marked. Make sure you label your answers very, very carefully. Remember, you only answer 4 of the 6 themes. This is very important. They will only mark your highest 4. And we have studied only 4 themes, theme A, B, D and E. You do not answer theme C or F. That is highly important. Theme A, religion, relationships and families. Theme B is religion and life. Theme D, religion, peace and conflict. And theme E, religion, crime and punishment. So how to revise religious studies. You've all been given the 8 revision booklets for every topic that you have studied across the course. If you do find yourself without any or have lost any or need a second copy, please visit F3, please visit myself and I will hand you another copy. Another way that you can revise religious studies is have debate or discussions with your friends and family. Choose some of the more complex topic areas to debate and discuss and try and get it fresh in your head. We've done a lot of work on creating flashcards in lessons, use the same strategies, and don't forget it's not just the creating them but it's the using them that is the most important. Practice exam questions, can't emphasize that enough. Please do feel that you can email me at any time with some practice answers and I will give you one-to-one bespoke feedback. And I have also shared with you the YouTube channel that shows some videos of the course on there. So GCSE Religious Studies top tips. Remember to audit your knowledge so that what you are revising is the stuff you don't know. Don't open it up to page 1 and start there because that might be a topic you're very confident with already. Find out in each particular topic what you don't know. For example, on the Buddhist beliefs paper, you might be quite confident with the life story of the Buddha, and that takes up the first 6-7 pages on the booklet. However, you might struggle with the concept of Dharma or dependent arising, or the Mahayana teaching on sunyata. Go straight to those areas and make sure that you are aware of all the topics within a theme that you are less familiar with. Learn your lists, especially in Buddhism. There's a lot of lists, whether it's the 3 poisons, the 3 marks of existence, the 4 noble truths, the 4 sights, the 8-fold path, the 5 moral precepts, the 6 perfections. Make sure you learn your lists. Very, very common to get a 1-mark question saying give one of the, and it will give you a list. So make sure that you're aware of examples of those. Also, practice 2 key beliefs or practices on every topic. At bare minimum, you know you're going to get a 4 or 6-mark question on each exam paper that asks you to explain 2 of different things within that topic area. So instead of spending hours and hours and hours trying to revise one particular area thoroughly, make sure that you know 2 of everything. That's really important. Practice explaining these with religious teachings as well, including quotes or key concepts. Again, email me, myself, for any past practice exam questions, and I can give you quick feedback, and again, start with the more complex topics. Please email or speak to myself if you need any more advice on this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andy Richardson, and I'm going to talk you through what your child needs to do to be successful in GCSE music. We study OCR exam board, and for this course 60% is for their controlled assessment. So they should be working on a solo performance, an ensemble performance where there needs to be 2 live performers, a free composition, and then a composition which is based on a starting point such as some chords or some lyrics or a set of notes. The deadline for the coursework is the 15th of May. This is when the marks are sent off to the exam board. We obviously need a couple of weeks beforehand to mark everything internally and fill in all the paperwork. The listening exam is split up into 4 areas of study. The concerto through time, which looks at music from the Baroque period, the classical period and the Romantic period. This is music written for a solo instrument accompanied by an orchestra. We then look at Area Study 3, which is Rhythms of the World. This is music from India, Indian classical music. There's Bhangra from the Punjab region. There's Greek music, Israeli and Palestinian, African drumming, and then we look at Brazilian samba and calypso music from Trinidad and Tobago. Area Study 4 covers film music and computer game music, and Area Study 5 looks at pop. So we've got rock and roll from the 50s and 60s, rock anthems from the 70s and 80s, pop ballads from the 70s, 80s and 90s, and solo artists from the 1990s up to the present day. Every year the music exam follows a very similar structure. There is an essay question where pupils need to write in full sentences and they can use a planning page to plan what they will write first. The music chosen for this question could be from one of the areas of study, such as Bhangra or Calypso for example, but it sometimes is also a piece of computer game or film music. Pupils will then need to make links between the music that they can hear and the reason it was made. For example, it could be a piece of music written for Jurassic Park describing a dinosaur. They need to look at the musical elements and work out what has been chosen to describe the action on the screen. Later on in the exam there is a dictation question where a musical score is printed out for the main melody of the music. The rhythm, the length of the notes is given, but the pitch isn't, so pupils need to listen carefully and try to decide which shape the musical melody is. This is normally something that goes up in pitch or down in pitch, or it could be repeated elsewhere. Later on in the exam there is a comparison question where pupils will hear 2 different pieces of music, often from the same style, and they need to say what is the same and what is different between the 2, again using full sentences. For the essay question and the comparison question, they are marked on their use of spelling, punctuation and grammar. There is another tricky question later on in the exam where pupils need to label up a score, a musical set of notes, and write down things like the instruments that are played, it could be the time signature, and also adding things like the dynamics to the music. Along with these more difficult questions, there are lots of shorter questions worth 1 to 4 marks to test pupils' knowledge of the styles and also their music theory. The listening exam is June. How to revise for music. Flashcards with keywords are really useful, with all the facts and features of the 4 areas of study. Mind maps with key information on also help. Revision videos are available and been sent to students, which are on YouTube. There's lots of practice questions and past papers available, and if students look at the mark schemes they can start to learn the answers that the examiner will be looking for. Top tips for doing well: practicing instruments daily for 20 minutes is a lot better than practicing for an hour once a week. Pupils should be listening to a wide range of music and trying to identify what they can hear, starting with the easier things like tempo, instruments, and then moving on to the more difficult areas like what are they actually playing? Are they playing chords? Are they playing the melody? Are they playing certain types of rhythms? And when students are answering questions, try to talk like a musician. Use musical vocabulary, so use words like dynamics instead of volume. Hello, my name is Andy Richardson, and I'm going to talk you through what your child needs to do to be successful in GCSE music. We study OCR exam board, and for this course 60% is for their controlled assessment. So they should be working on a solo performance, an ensemble performance where there needs to be 2 live performers, a free composition, and then a composition which is based on a starting point such as some chords or some lyrics or a set of notes. The deadline for the coursework is the 15th of May. This is when the marks are sent off to the exam board. We obviously need a couple of weeks beforehand to mark everything internally and fill in all the paperwork. The listening exam is split up into 4 areas of study. The concerto through time, which looks at music from the Baroque period, the classical period and the Romantic period. This is music written for a solo instrument accompanied by an orchestra. We then look at Area Study 3, which is Rhythms of the World. This is music from India, Indian classical music. There's Bhangra from the Punjab region. There's Greek music, Israeli and Palestinian, African drumming, and then we look at Brazilian samba and calypso music from Trinidad and Tobago. Area Study 4 covers film music and computer game music, and Area Study 5 looks at pop. So we've got rock and roll from the 50s and 60s, rock anthems from the 70s and 80s, pop ballads from the 70s, 80s and 90s, and solo artists from the 1990s up to the present day. Every year the music exam follows a very similar structure. There is an essay question where pupils need to write in full sentences, and they can use a planning page to plan what they will write first. The music chosen for this question could be from one of the areas of study, such as Bhangra or Calypso, for example, but it sometimes is also a piece of computer game or film music. Pupils will then need to make links between the music that they can hear and the reason it was made. For example, it could be a piece of music written for Jurassic Park, describing a dinosaur. They need to look at the musical elements and work out what has been chosen to describe the action on the screen. Later on in the exam there is a dictation question where a musical score is printed out for the main melody of the music. The rhythm, the length of the notes is given, but the pitch isn't, so pupils need to listen carefully and try to decide which shape the musical melody is. This is normally something that goes up in pitch or down in pitch, or it could be repeated elsewhere. Later on in the exam there is a comparison question where pupils will hear 2 different pieces of music, often from the same style, and they need to say what is the same and what is different between the two, again using full sentences. For the essay question and the comparison question, they are marked on their use of spelling, punctuation and grammar. There is another tricky question later on in the exam where pupils need to label up a score, a musical set of notes, and write down things like the instruments that are played, it could be the time signature, and also adding things like the dynamics to the music. Along with these more difficult questions, there are lots of shorter questions worth 1 to 4 marks to test pupils' knowledge of the styles and also their music theory. The listening exam is June. How to revise for music. Flashcards with keywords are really useful, with all the facts and features of the 4 areas of study. Mind maps with key information on also help. Revision videos are available and been sent to students, which are on YouTube. There's lots of practice questions and past papers available, and if students look at the mark schemes, they can start to learn the answers that the examiner will be looking for. Top tips for doing.
Hello, my name is Faye Meskam. I'm going to take you through what your child needs to do to be successful in the forthcoming GCSE French and German exams. So our board is AQA. It is made up of 4 parts, equally marked, equally weighted: listening, speaking, reading and writing. With the GCSE speaking exam starting immediately after Easter on that first Monday back, depending on whether your child takes French or German, they will have a different date. Just to let you know that we do have some mock speaking exams, which is a fantastic opportunity for pupils to try firsthand and really experience what it's like to have an exam in the green room under completely controlled conditions. It's a really good starting point and a great experience for them. So the dates of the German exams, the listening and reading will be on the 8th of May and the writing on the 15th. For French it's later, the listening and reading on the 21st of May and the writing on the 5th of June. So how to revise for MFL. So we will always tell you it is little and often. Like all exams, there is no point in cramming just before the exam. You're going to overwhelm yourself and probably feel like you're not ready for it. So fast vocab PowerPoints are what we use during lessons, and these are available for pupils. They're single words in French, then in English, just as a quick 10, 15, 20-minute revision session on a certain theme. If pupils have access to French or German box sets on Netflix, then they can either watch these watch something familiar, which is the best thing to do. Watch something familiar either with French or German subtitles, or you can change the audio. A great other way of retaining information, putting it in your long-term memory, is by using flashcards, and that's with particular mention of the Lightner method, which we've talked about before and I've shown pupils. Teaching someone at home, even if it's the dog, talking some French or German every day will really help. Past papers, as for any other exam, are a real game changer. Once pupils know the format of the exams and they've answered all of the questions, all of the papers that we've got, they feel really, really ready, especially if they then use them with the mark schemes, and obviously attending any relevant revision sessions that are on offer. So our recommended websites are Linguascope and BBC Bitesize. Linguascope has two sections: foundation, so that's basic, and then basic for foundation pupils, and then we've got an intermediate section for our higher pupils. With BBC Bitesize, pupils need to make sure they select AQA up until 2024, and then each theme is there for them, each skill area is there for them, and there's everything they need on that website. So, top tips just to finish off. Prepare well for the speaking exam. The speaking exam is 25% of your overall exam. When pupils walk into the sports hall for their reading, writing, listening exams, they will have already done 25%. So I know that pupils are working on them at the moment. Whatever you can do to keep rehearsing, keep practicing, keep speaking French every day, be ready for those unprepared questions, be ready to have conversations about little things that you won't have practiced, but by practicing other conversations and other topics and themes every day, you'll soon build your confidence. Again, no last minute cramming, and the skills that you're picking up in your speaking exam, so you might have learnt an answer by heart to a particular question that you don't get asked. You're then going to use that in your writing exam, or possibly notice it in your reading exam, or hear it in your listening exam. For pupils aiming at higher grades, we really need you to be using idioms, so that's expressions, for the subjunctive tense, and really reading around topics. If I go back to the BBC Bitesize Intermediate programme, there are some wonderful resources on there, lovely expressions that the pupils can change to suit their own need, to really boost their range of vocab and the complexity of the written and spoken words. The best thing that all pupils can be doing is obviously be in school every day, attend revision, so it doesn't all become too overwhelming. Thank you. Bonne chance.
Good evening, this is Mrs Toy talking through the information for parents and carers for the upcoming drama GCSEs. The exam board we use is Edexcel, so if students wanted to look for extra resources, there will be some available online. Just search Edexcel GCSE drama. There will also be supplies given to students in a physical paper folder sent home previously before Christmas, and there will also be resources available on Go for Schools. The first examination, which is coming up very shortly, is on Tuesday the 24th of March and will last all day. We do have an off timetable day on the Monday the 23rd of March just before this. This is for the visiting examiner to come in and assess students on their performance skills. The examiner will come in the day, the morning, and will watch the students perform and mark them on the spot. There will be no restarts, no retries. We will receive the results of that exam in August with the rest of the results for the GCSE. Students will have the Monday, as I said, off timetable to prepare and run through their pieces. However, preparations are already underway and they should not be left until that day. That will just be for running tech, running with costumes. It will not be an opportunity for students to continually run over lines. The written paper will be on Friday the 8th of May. So during the first weeks of full GCSE exams, and that will be Theatre Makers in Practice. Section A of that exam will be on an inspector calls and Section B on the live theatre review, to which students can answer on either Warhorse, which they went to see last year, or what we are going to see in January of this year, Dear England. How to revise drama. Students have access to past papers from myself, as well as I will pop them online to Go for Schools and as part of the Teams group. So students should be using these papers to go through what possible questions they could be asked, as well as to practice answers, which I'm happy to mark and get back to students as soon as possible. Students also were given a big design booklet for design details of the play. This was a big A3 booklet, which I'm happy to redistribute if students have lost it, which covers all the technical elements of the play and gives students an opportunity to plan and create their designs for the final exam. Things like costume, lighting, sound, set, all covered in that booklet. If students have lost it, I strongly recommend they get another one from me. The other thing students could do with doing is memorising key quotes using flashcards or voice memos, because they may need to call upon these in one of the questions in their exam on inspector calls. They could also do with looking for inspiration pictures from past productions, not just the Stephen Daldry version which they were lucky enough to see in Wolverhampton, but the other productions which might have different ideas. Students also need to prepare their 500 words in advance of the exam, which needs to be handed to me for checking. For the practical exam, students first and foremost need to be learning their lines. Now, students are lucky that there are apps available to help with this, which were not available when I was doing my GCSEs. So if students search on the App Store for line learning apps, there are some useful developments where they can use to learn their lines with help from an app. There will also be opportunities to rehearse after school. If a Year 11 student asks me to rehearse with them, I'm more than happy to do this at a suitable time. Myself and Mr. Plant are happy to help after school directing or blocking parts that students need help on. Our drama recommended sites are firstly YouTube, particularly for the practical performances, looking at clips for monologues and duologues to compare what you do to how other people have interpreted and get some new ideas, and also for clips and trailers for Warhorse, or the show they go and see in January. So as you can recap what the costumes, sound, set, lighting was like in the production. We also find bite size very, very useful, so long as you are looking at the Edexcel drama section, not the other exam boards, and also National Theatre Online, which has resource packs for Warhorse on there, as well as lots of other theatre information and videos. Our top tips are that you prepare thoroughly for your performance exam. You only get one go. There is no starting again. If you forget lines, if you mess something up, if you feel like you've done it wrong and need to start again, you can't. You just have to start an applause and that's the end of the performance for you. It's harsh, but it's the way the exam board does it. So we just want to make sure students are as prepared as possible so they have nothing to worry about on the actual day. Having your design plans for an inspector calls ready before the exam is a really wise thing to do. You can apply them to any design question. So if you have created generic designs for costume, lighting, set, whatever the question and extract you get, you have your plans there ready for you. So that big design booklet is really, really important. And finally, remember please that in your exam, whatever the question is, you can structure your answers using the 3 questions: what, why, how. What would you do in terms of performance skill, in terms of design? Why would you do it? What's your reasoning behind it? What's the effect you want to have? And how is it going to impact your audience? How are you going to make your audience feel about what you have done? Thank you for listening. Any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself.
Good afternoon, this is Faye Mescam, Assistant Head, and I'm going to be taking you through the GCSE French and German exam for this year. Both exams, both French and German, followed the Edexcel exam board, and both follow the same structure. That's listening, speaking, reading, writing, all separate exams, all of which are equally weighted at 25%. The speaking exam window opens on the 16th of April, and there listed below we've got all of the rest of the exams ranging between the 7th of May till the 12th of June, depending on whether you're doing French or German. In terms of how those exams will look and feel for the pupils, if we start with the listening exam, foundation pupils, that will be for 45 minutes, and higher, that will be for 60. The speaking exam for foundation pupils, your exam will last between 7 and 9 minutes, and higher, yours will last between 10 and 12. Both higher and foundation pupils will need to complete a read aloud activity followed by 2 unprepared questions, a transactional role play, a picture description followed by 2 unprepared questions, and follow-on conversation. The reading paper for foundation is 45 minutes, higher is 60 minutes. For writing, foundation is 1 hour and 15, and for higher, 1 hour and 20. The foundation exam is made up of a picture task, a 50-word task, and a 90-word task, both of which have a choice of 2 options, followed by a translation into French. The higher paper has a 90-word task, a 150 words task, both again with a choice of 2 options, followed by a translation into French. In terms of how to revise MFL, little and often is the best option. All pupils have access to fast vocab PowerPoints from each of the units covered over the past 2 years, and I would recommend listening, using those 10 minutes, 15 minutes every other day, particularly focusing on topics or vocabulary that is difficult or stubborn to stick. The more they use it, the better. Watch or listening to French or German box sets on Netflix, either with the audio in English and the relevant subtitles or the other way around. Testing yourself using flashcards, the Lightner method is particularly effective, or getting someone else to test you, and completing past papers under control conditions. We do use Linguoscope as well. We have a beginners and intermediate, both of which are relevant for foundation and higher, and most of the topics covered can be found on that. Thank you very much for listening. Bonne chance.
Hello there, this is Tim Parr. I'm Head of Computing, Business and DIT. I'm going to talk you through how to prepare your pupils best for their exams in those subjects. So starting with GCSE Computer Science, the course code is J277 and it's the OCR exam board. The qualification has 2 equally weighted papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 consists of computer systems, paper 2 computational thinking, algorithms and programming. So paper 1 computer systems is very much about knowledge recall. If pupils refer to their revision guides, they'll be able to see all of the content which needs to be revised. For the first point of call, I'd recommend all throughout year 10 and year 11, we've been using Microsoft Teams for a lot of our work. And at the end of each of our assessments and mock papers, there is a question level analysis. So a good place to start would be to look at the question level analysis to identify any weaker areas, and that would be a good place to start for revision. Practice number conversions for paper 1. There's a bit of maths involved, so pupils should be fairly confident in binary conversion, but I know they do struggle with hexadecimal. So a good practice would be hexadecimal conversions to binary and denary, and it'd be good to try and find out some alternative types of question types. So by looking at past papers, looking at different types of questions regarding how the questions are worded, specifically I think from the 2023 paper as well. Paper 2 is more about computational thinking, algorithms and programming. Any sort of practice, writing, doing sort of coding is going to help here. However, in the exam, pupils don't have the luxury of having a computer to practice out bits of code. So it's really important they practice writing code on paper and problem solving on paper. There's a good website, you can see on the bottom of the useful resources, revise csuk.io. If you click on free resources, there's a section called an algorithm a day, which posts questions and pupils have to try and solve, write down their solution in kind of programming language, and there's some solutions on there. So I'd definitely say for paper 2 is more about problem solving rather than necessarily knowledge recall. There's loads and loads of useful resources. As a department, we've provided every pupil with a CGP revision guide. There is a supporting guide with practice questions which you can buy. I think I recommended that when that got distributed to pupils. BBC Bite Size, as you probably know, is a great resource for content. Practice papers obviously are the best source of revision, especially if pupils want to know where their weaknesses are to start off with. Just remember, when you're searching for it, you use OCR, and the specification is J277. Craig and Dave videos, we've used this as a flipped learning method throughout all of year 10 and year 11. Pupils are really familiar with these videos, these short videos which cover the content in little sections. So pupils will know how to access these, and they explain the content really, really well. The W3 Schools website is good for learning how to code. So if pupils want to practice their code and want to learn how to do certain things, they go to that and they search for Python. And finally, the Seneca Learning website is a really good revision tool just for knowledge recall and practice questions, that sort of thing. Thank you. Okay, so GCSE Business, we follow the Pearson Edexcel specification. The course code there is 1BSO. It's really important you use those codes when you are looking for any sort of past papers online. The final exams, as you can see, have 2 equally weighted papers, each worth 50%. Paper 1 is all about investigating small businesses. So imagine you're starting up a business. How do you identify any business ideas? How do you grow the business? What things to be aware of? Paper 2 is all about building a business. So this is where we look at more established businesses, ones we can relate to, ones we see in everyday life, and how do businesses grow? What other factors are there? Paper 1, the content was mainly covered in year 10, and paper 2, content from year 11. Now, both papers are an hour and 45 minutes. In the past, a couple of years ago, they were an hour and a half, but the exam board identified that many pupils didn't have time to finish the paper. So what they've done is they've gone to consultation, and it's now an hour and 45 minutes. And it's really important that 15 minutes later, it allows pupils to read the case studies in a lot of detail to analyse those businesses. So I'm going to jump ahead to the useful resources. We provided the pupils with a CGP revision guide, really simple book with lots of content in there, written in a way which is really accessible for all of our pupils. If you did want to support pupils a bit more, there is an accompanying revision guide with loads of practice questions in there. You can just search for that online, CGP, GCSE Business Edexcel, and I'm sure you'll be able to find some supporting questions. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, there is a lot of practice papers available out there. It is a very popular qualification and specification. So if you just go to the Pearson website, if you find the 1BSO course, there is a lot of supporting resources for pupils to download. So past papers, case studies, practice questions, even sample answers as well. BBC Bite Size and Seneca Learning are great online resources for content and for practice questions and little testers to kind of check your knowledge. There's a really good channel on YouTube by a pair called Two Teachers, little short videos to go over specific contents or parts of the GCSE specification. And finally, watching Dragon's Den is a really good way of relating what we've learned in year 10 and 11 to real life situations, real life entrepreneurs. So it gives a bit of context of what pupils are doing. Okay, so going back to ways to prepare. So pupils have had to learn a lot over the last year 10 and 11. They didn't do business in year 7, 8 and 9, so there's a lot of content to remember. Now, in addition to that, it's really important pupils understand how to answer questions. We really focus on how pupils answer and structure their answers to how the exam board want it. Pupils need to be identified those command words such as explain, discuss, justify and evaluate, and the examiner is going to look for a certain structure to their answers. So pupils should use past papers, the mark schemes and examiners' reports to try and identify how to structure those answers. When it comes to mathematical application, pupils are allowed calculators in the exams, but they have to remember the formulae. So in paper 1, they need to know how to calculate total revenue, how to work out total costs, how to work out variable and fixed costs, to calculate profit or loss, how to calculate interest on things like loans, working out the break-even points. So pupils have done this looking at on a chart, but they need to know the formula for it as well. And finally, the margin of safety. It's really important they learn those formulas for those particular calculations. Paper 2, they need to learn how to calculate gross and net profit. Moving on from that, gross and net profit margins, and finally the average rate of return, more complex formulae they need to remember. When it comes to sections B and C, pupils, in each paper there's 3 sections, section A, B and C. Section A are questions just about business in general, generic questions. That's really important. In sections B and C, they apply their answers to the context. Now what this means is each exam paper will have 2 case studies about existing businesses. So it's really important in sections B and C, every single answer has got to show they've applied their knowledge to the business in question. So for example, let's say if Nando's was one of the case studies, they need to refer in their answers, rather than saying the business, they say the Portuguese chicken restaurants, rather than talking about customers, they say, oh, diners, because that's showing they are applying their knowledge to that particular context. And just those little things can make a massive impact on the marks. Talking about the case studies is really important, and pupils take time to really read the question and understand the context. Anything in there which they can put in their answers is going to help get that application mark. I always like the idea of thinking pink. So P stands for product. So they have to identify what product or service are they selling. IN is short for industry. Okay, what kind of area of business are they working in? C would be customer. Who's a typical customer? Describe and think about their demographic, interests, location. And finally, competitors. Who are typical competitors of that particular business? And if they can use those answers in their answer, that shows that application. Okay, if there's any further help that I can help with, please ask myself or Miss Fensom, and we will help as best as I can. Thank you. Okay, so I think this is the first scheduled exam of the summer, and that is the BTEC Digital Information Technology Component 3 exam. It's worth 40% of the overall mark. Pupils have already done their 2 Pearson set assignments, each one worth 30%, and they know their grades for those already. So this final exam is all about effective digital working practices. It's, as you can see there, it's on Thursday, the 1st of May in the afternoon. It is 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it's 60 marks overall. So we've provided pupils with a revision guide, the Pearson revision guide. All of the content they need is in there. Throughout years 10 and 11, pupils will be completing what's called workbooks on Teams. So that would be a good source of revision to help pupils go and look at the content. And there is some sample assessment material from the Pearson website. So if you just go onto the website, find BTEC DIT, you'll be able to see some Component 3 supporting material. Now, because the qualification is recently redesigned from 2022, there's not many past papers readily available in an open sort of context. So if pupils do want to come to me, I can probably provide them with one of the secure papers. But besides that, there was one sample assessment material for the paper. Now the paper itself, you can see it's all about effective digital working practices. So it's really important pupils understand the context of the questions. They were going to be about the use of digital technology in workplaces and its impact it has. Some good techniques would be to use a revision guide, make flashcards or mind maps or weaker topics. And obviously pupils have their own preferred revision techniques, but I find these is a good way to start. On the revision guide, at the bottom of each page, there are some practice questions. So what's called now try this. That's a good little question to get them to recall their knowledge and apply it to those business contexts. Towards the end of the book, pages 56 to 57, there are some questions, some examples of different question types. it'd be really important to go through, look at some past papers and see how to go about answering the questions. Now, there's less emphasis on this compared to other qualifications like business, but it's important that pupils understand the level of detail that they're expected to get for each of these different question types. I would say the main focus on this qualification would be knowledge recall, making sure they know and can remember the amount of content we've covered in years 10 and year 11. It's really important pupils being correctly equipped. It may require some drawing and annotations to some diagrams, so pupils need to make sure they bring a pencil, ruler, rubber and a pen, obviously. One of the things they have to do is flow charts and information and data flow diagrams. So you might find there'll be a lot of drawing and rubbing out and trying again. So it's really important they're well equipped and making sure they're fully prepared for it. Okay, good luck.
This is one of the many mottos I often repeat to Year 11, progress, not perfection. It can be used in every walk of life and it works perfectly well for revision and commitment to school. We can all have an off day and we can all need that space away from learning, and we accept that pupils may need a day off of revision in order to rebuild their mental reserves, and no one is looking for perfection. When staff can see that pupils are working hard, that they care for their futures as much as we know that parents and we ourselves do, that is all we can ask. We're not looking for perfection, just progress. This is another regular message that I convey during assemblies to make the point that every time a pupil sits down at a desk, whether that be an A9 or A10, a classroom for a lesson, an intervention session or a revision session, they are helping to forge out a different future from themselves. Ultimately, their seat in the hall is the one in the picture, as this is where real final results are solidified. But it really is just a symbolic way to show pupils that their future is in their hands, and that when they do sit in the sports hall for their exam in the summer, all the work and preparation they have done until then will provide them with the future they fully deserve, one bursting with open doors and opportunity. I hope you found this presentation useful. It will also be shared with pupils, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for all your support in the past and for the coming weeks and months. See you at prom.